Hello, and you are very welcome to the second installment of ASHRAE Ireland's chapter's COVID-19 technical webinar series. My name is Conor Deane, and I am the Young Engineers ASHRAE Chair, and I'll be chairing today's session. So just first, a brief overview of today's agenda. Firstly, I'll give a short introduction on ASHRAE HQ resources, ASHRAE Learning Institute and the student chapters. I will then hand it over to our panelist, Michael Curran, for today's topic, which is addressing the challenges of COVID-19 in building services. At the end, there will be a short 10 to 15 minute Q&A for all attendees. So there are just three main housekeeping issues regarding today's technical webinar. Point one is in relation to the Q&A session. And for those who are participating for the first time, you can answer or you ask questions in the form of typed comments using the questions tab or chat function. You can submit your questions during or after seminar, and they will be read out at the end of the Q&A session. If you have any difficulty at all, just email myself or Dan Coakley at secretary@ashrae.ireland.org. Secondly, there are handouts, presentations, and relevant material will be available on our website. And again, you can contact myself if you have any follow-up comments. And lastly, when this seminar is concluded, you will receive a very short survey, which we'd really appreciate your feedback on if you are happy to receive follow-up information. And we'll also ask you to rate today's presentation. And finally, it'll be an opportunity just to follow up on Michael's presentation. So today's webinar is a part of an 8-mini series organised by ASHRAE Ireland, and it runs from every 2 weeks from June till September. The main objective of these series is to bring together a range of expert panelists from both industry and academia, covering topics related to reducing the spread of airborne infections and, of course, the new normal of COVID-19. So last week we had Dr. Parag Rastogi from Arvinco, and he presented on a data-driven COVID-19 response framework. And these presentations, as well as all presentations, are available on our website. So the remaining webinar sessions, as you can see, are in the planning stages, and we'll release these as we confirm them. So aside from ASHRAE Ireland's activities, ASHRAE HQ has also done a lot in response to COVID-19. Firstly, ASHRAE have created a dedicated webpage covering guidance on HVAC systems and the phased return to building operations. They've developed an epidemic task force with over 100 members, which you can send any questions or queries directly to. There are a number of position documents, two of which I've highlighted here, which present evidence-based information on infectious diseases. And thirdly, the ASHRAE handbooks, as we all know, and section standards and guidelines are actually available, freely available for a limited time, which you can access. And finally, there are a lot of instructor-led training courses available, which are listed here. I think there are 2 left on the 8th of July and the 21st of July. Just finally, before we begin today's presentation, as Young Engineers ASHRAE Chair, I'd like to just mention our ASHRAE student chapters. So there are currently 3 student chapters in UCD, CIT, and most recently founded NUIG Galway. I suppose the main objective of these chapters is to establish a younger ASHRAE membership, but it also acts as an opportunity to connect industry and students through research projects, events, seminars, and even recruitment opportunities for industry. So for any more information on this, you can contact myself or the activities chair, student activities chair, Adam O'Donovan. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to today's panelist, Michael Curran. So Michael is the current head of building services in the National University of Ireland, Galway, and he's the present chairman of CIBSE Ireland. So Michael is a core part of the day-to-day operations in NUIG Galway, and in recent years has specifically focused on the university sustainability strategy, leading the team on actually winning the SEAI Team of the Year in 2019. So, Michael, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think you can hear me. I hope so. Excellent. So I begin. I'd like to welcome everyone to the seminar today here in NUIG Galway. It's a bit overcast here in Galway at the minute, so I hope it's warm and sunny where you are. To start off first, I'd like to thank both Conor and Daniel for inviting me along to speak about this topic. It is quite relevant at the minute. And also on behalf of CIBSE Ireland, we'd like to congratulate Michael Geraghty, who's become the ASHRAE chapter chair coming up this term. I hope further collaboration between both ourselves, ASHRAE and CIBSE Ireland, will bring many fruitful partnerships. As I say, I'm the chair of CIBSE Ireland this year. Back in our AGM in May, I was proposed and delighted to take on the role as chair of CIBSE. It is quite a difficult time at the minute, and we even expressed that in our AGM. So, as I say, Conor and Daniel asked me to look at the COVID-19 technical addressing the challenge of COVID building services. So we looked at it from the point of view of NUIG Galway. So just going through the presentation, what I'm actually going to do as from now on, I'm actually going to take off the webcam because I've done these before and they're very distracting. So I'm going to disappear for a few minutes. So basically we're going to do an overview of NUIG Galway. Number two is we're going to story of COVID-19 and impacts in NUIG Galway, planning the return for research and students and staff, mechanical services, electrical services, lift installations, information gathered going forward, and then finally questions and answers. So for some reason we can. So opinions and assumptions. So just a few bits and pieces on this. I suppose it's a sort of disclaimer on the presentation, because the whole COVID-19 is rapidly changing on the hour by the day. So this presentation is basically based on what advice that the Public Health and Government of Ireland direction and guidance. It's also limited to the 2 metre distance, which is under review by the government. UK government have brought it back to a metre with conditions. Ireland is still 2 metres, although that changed last night in the document issued by the Department of Education on this matter. So all activities on the campus are based on the Irish government roadmap. And all opinions during this presentation are personal opinions and basically do not represent CIBSE.org. Some of them do, some of them don't. Okay. Rules of webinar. I suppose we've all been going to lectures and webinars and talks before. I suppose they've changed now with COVID. These are some of the ones that I find quite interesting when you are attending webinars at home. Is keep the children occupied out of the room so they don't burst in. Recognize where your fire exits are from your kitchen or office, either your back door or your front door. Turn your phone to silent and turn off all the apps. And then finally, they were limited these to an hour because you do have to get back to the kids and back to the jobs at home if you're still working at home. So we'll continue on there now. So I just want to give you a brief synopsis of what NUIG Galway, for those that aren't familiar with it and where it is. So we rank in the top 1% of universities under the QS World University Rankings. 5 of our researchers were named among the world's highest cited researchers. We have 16 brand new buildings with all research facilities in them, and with 98% of Ireland's top graduates employability. NUIG Galway, it's a driver for transformational change for our people in our region. And this has become to the fore now, where NUIG Galway, the new strategy 2025, is worth having a look at. If you've got time, log on to NUIG Galway and check out the strategy. One of the key pillars, which is very important to the whole side of the building services I look after, is the whole pillar on sustainability and the objectives that we've set out there. NUIG Galway follows the public sector guidelines and the climate action plan, we set out different strategies for coming up for the next 5 years, but also an ambitious target of being a carbon neutral campus by 2030. So I welcome everyone to go and have a look at the Strategy 2025 document. So you see from the map here, NUIG Galway isn't just based in Galway. We have complex there in Shannon. We have medical centres in Mayo, Castlebar, Sligo, Letterkenny. We have Irish College in Gweedore, and out in Curran we have research. So it's quite an extensive campus. NUIG Galway has a foothold in. Our campus here at the minute, so as I say, we are the Queen's College Galway in 1845, and it became University College Galway in 92, and in 1997 we became NUIG Galway. So currently we host over 18,500 students and over 4,000 staff. And as a lot of people know, we're located right in the centre of Galway City on 104 hectares. On campus and around campus, we have 97 buildings, and we have a lot of outbuildings throughout. So there's approximately 150 buildings altogether within the main campus. This is a map of the campus here. You can see the full stretch. The campus runs along the River Corrib right up as far as Dangan, where we have our sports fields, and then we have our student residence in the centre there, and then we have our main campus buildings down at the south of the campus. So the story so far, so this is getting into what's happened. So 12th of March, the Taoiseach went to America and told us to close schools and colleges. 15th of March, we all got the shock when he said they had to close bars and hotels for the St. Patrick's weekend, which was very disappointing. On the 27th of March, they announced the complete lockdown, that everyone will stay at home. On the 1st of May, this was further brought extension of the rules. And then on the 5th of June, there was a roadmap over 5 phases. So what did that mean to the university? So on the 12th of March 2020, university ceased all teaching in lecture halls in small groups. All students were sent home on that day. On the 23rd of March 2020, university started online teaching. So there was a lot of collaboration between one of the departments here, CIBSE, ISS, and all the lecturers to prepare online study material, which by all accounts has gone really, really well, and it worked well for students. So good that on the 21st, online exams and assessments began. So this helped students fulfill their criteria for that year by the online exams and submitting assessments. So in May 2020, NUIG Galway, as part of other universities, were successful applicants for COVID-19 research funding. And this meant that we had to look at getting the campus back open again for research facilities. So how did it impact on the campus? Campus population, students, staff, it reduced drastically from over 20,000 to maybe a couple of hundred people within a few weeks. Key personnel that was located on site. Most research stopped immediately. All retail and dining locations closed. Park and ride closed. Clamping stopped. That was one of the positives of this. Leisure centre and car parks closed, and the reduced level of staff and support remained. So security staff, key personnel in terms of fire, security, a small level of teams on the maintenance side were left on campus. Impacts, before the Taoiseach went to America, we could see that there was issues happening. So as part of the energy team, we issued out, I suppose, information to staff to isolate sockets, turn off kettles, turn off light switch, close fume cupboards. You can see the picture there on the right-hand side is one of the main display boards in the James Hardiman Library. So already the university are advising students and staff on COVID and what was happening. We also had to cancel our St. Patrick's Day energy campaign. Again, it's a campaign that we run at Christmas and Easter, where we asked all staff and students to basically turn off as much of the power consumption that's on campus. So COVID-19 did that drastically for us. So you see this map here is a diagram from our building management system. So you can see there along the line at the bottom that on the 17th of March, you can see the peaks and troughs the days before, and then the 17th of March, then you can see the big drop off in energy consumption in kilowatt hours throughout the campus. So all the different lines are different buildings, and it shows you I suppose the extent of the energy reduction. Again, NUIG Galway is a research-based university as well, so we still have a lot of research buildings that, okay, we didn't have occupants, but we did still have high intensity loads from fume cupboards and from fridges and freezers and different equipment like that. So although the university was closed, and it is the assumption that you're going to reduce all your energy, but you're not actually, because you still have a lot of equipment going on in the background. So as building services team, we straight away got onto the BMS controls map and started turning off equipment, turning off air handling units, isolating different systems. All the mechanical plant was isolated, all the electrical services plant were isolated. Now these were isolated in buildings that really there was no occupancy going to happen. Research buildings, we still had to maintain temperatures in some of the labs. We still had to maintain power supplies to some of the labs. It was essential that because the campus was being sort of left basically nearly empty, that we had to make sure our generators, our UPS, our fire alarm systems, our gas systems. So we did spend quite a time ensuring that they were all ready for use in case of emergency for research purposes. So I suppose one of the advantages of COVID-19 is that it's actually come at the end of the heating season. And it was coming to a natural period of time when we were isolating heating systems, we were isolating ventilation systems because lectures were stopping because there was really no activity on campus. This also allows us now going forward and planning that because we've reduced occupancy coming back onto site, that you can work at these different parts of building services without interruption. So, as I say, we have a dedicated team here of maintenance team for mechanical, electrical that basically carried out all the, I suppose, starting the maintenance of the boilers and the controls. Again, COVID lines, parts and components, our suppliers were able to supply us with whatever parts we needed during the COVID so we could get these things done. So planning the return for researchers. So the campus was open during lockdown. Although it was closed, hypothetically, it was open because maintenance teams were still carrying out checks daily. Our security guys were still checking the campus regularly. Researchers were allowed back into buildings on selected projects approved by the UMT, but this is on a control visits with security. During the whole process in the first month or so, NUIG Galway assisted the health service executive on a number of different projects. The first was the 150-bed step-down facility in Bailey Allen and the O'Donoghue Theatre. This was in preparation in the requirement of a step-down hospital in Galway, but thankfully, touch wood, at the minute we haven't used that facility, but it was still left on standby. The contract tracing centre was established in engineering, so again, another space that we had to maintain services. And then there was a lot of NUIG Galway staff who manned test centres or worked in the hospital. So while the campus was closed, there was still activity going on throughout the process. So the government decided on a roadmap to reopen in Ireland. Phase one was colleges, they can open for staff and lecturers to prepare for online teaching. But also, as I mentioned previously, NUIG Galway researchers were heavily involved in study of COVID-19 through both practical research and also written research. So we had to access those researchers back to dedicated buildings. So a task force was set up by the president and the university, and building surveys team started looking at the objectives required for all the different buildings to reopen. So a number of headings were put in place, and as you can see on the right hand side, we had timetable research for buildings reopening. We put the strategy in place, capacity planning, COVID-19 training implications, implementation of recommendations. We were looking at signage and resources, staff and researchers return to just capacity. So on the strategy side, the buildings and estates nominated team got together and started looking at what was all the requirements needed for getting a research group back into a certain building. So it was advised that a research group nominated a COVID-19 liaison person that we could coordinate with and find out what they need. So we had online meetings, and we had to review all the service requirements. They looked at simple things, the way into a building, the way out of a building. And so it was a 4-week process for each research group. So week 1 was your capacity planning, etc., as shown on the table. Week 2 then was back to the building services, restore all the services, either through in-house or external contractors coming in. Week 3 then was mobilising, getting the actual space ready, signage, sanitisation, etc. And week 4 then was upon completion of all 3 tasks previously, then the group were allowed back in. So as I said, the COVID-19 has brought a lot of restrictions on campus. So as I said, this is a campus-based sort of scenario. There is different scenarios for different businesses out there, capacities, the same with hospitals, etc. But what it showed that the lab capacity, based on, you see the diagram on the right-hand side there, that was reduced to 25%. Now, this is still, again, I have to confirm that this is still the 2 meter distance. We have looked at the 1 meter distance, but this is based on the 2 meter distance. The lab capacity is 25% what it was previously. Lecture theatre capacity is reduced to 10% capacity. Classrooms 25%, meeting rooms 20%. And then review offices based on occupancy when they go back. During this period, no write-up areas will be used because we're still under the review that if you can do your write-up, you should be staying at home to do that. And then a review length of time. This is one of the sort of anomalies out there about returning to labs and returning to research, is that there is no real dedicated time limit for working during the day or whatever. There is the 15-minute time period for contact tracing, but not for limit. But the recommendation isn't out there yet, but our recommendation would be that 2 hours would be a barrier that you would use, because you're getting into fatigue and you're getting into tiredness, and you also need to take a break because you could be on PPE or whatever. Okay. So what does it mean? So in capacity terms, so as you can see on the left-hand side, before you had a large lecture theatre, that capacity was 250 people. And if you look at the photograph on the right-hand side, you can see the much reduced. Now, the reason the guys are wearing the masks there was they were medics, they were in training, and we have permission to use the photograph, but they were in training on COVID requirements. So looking at building services, why all the other different units within buildings and estates, I suppose we had to look and see, well, what do we need? How do we need to prepare for this as a unit in terms of mechanical services, electrical services? So we just jumped down everything, all the rooms, the common rooms like this we're going to need for common rooms, showers, kitchenettes, lab spaces, fixed equipment, fridges. Going through a whole sort of, as we called it, the brain dump. Let's see what do we need and work from there and prepare our schedules of operation. So in preparing that document as well, at the time, CIBSE had issued out the documents there, the CIBSE COVID-19 emergence from lockdown, the ventilation guidance documents, lift use, and then also occupancy as well. All these documents which are live on the CIBSE.org website. And the most recent version of the emergence from lockdown is version 3, and that was dated 19th of May. The COVID ventilation was version 2. Again, that's the 12th of May. Recommissioning lifts was the 12th of May as well. And occupancy lift is probably the most up-to-date one. It's the 29th of June, version 2. So as you can see, a lot of these documents are nearly 2 months old coming up. So in that period of time, a lot of stuff has changed. A lot of science research has happened. So it's envisaged that these will be updated. Other research looked at again was, as Conor was saying, looking at the ASHRAE to see what those guys were doing, see had they any protocols in place. The National Standards Authority of Ireland, they have documents for workplace protection improvement. And then Rehab issued out their document. And again, it was version 2 was updated on April the 3rd. Now, excuse me, I spoke to one of the guys representatives from Rehab, and they've actually going to issue out a new document by the end of July, which is going to be at least 2 months old worth of research and findings from what other groups are saying. So hopefully that'll give more answers to the questions that a lot of people are posing in terms of thermal wheels, in terms of fan coil units, because a lot more research will be done. So, and then the 4th document we looked at there on the page was the Well Institute, and had a few discussions with Mona, who was the previous chairperson of CIBSE Ireland, who's one of the lead certifiers in Ireland. So we discussed different options for services with that, and it's a very good document. As I say, all these documents are live on the web, and it's worth actually logging on and finding them and just having to read through them. I suppose a lot of us were looking at this image back in January and thinking about our summer holidays and where we were going to go, and looking at all the aspects. Now we can't do any of this unless you're sunny in some parts of Ireland or something like that there. But it also changed the whole aspect from ourselves as a university, because In the summertime is our period when we start our maintenance. We get our maintenance ready for our students coming back in September. So what it's meant is that we have now brought our maintenance period from normal August back into June. So it's changed the whole way we've worked here in the university. So, and again, it's brought in a lot of implications: hand washing, isolating of urinals, hand sanitizing stations, extra cleaning throughout the campus, more cleaning throughout the campus, and also all the signage that's required to keep these, I suppose, waste systems working. So I'm just going to go through the mechanical plant that we looked at in terms of how we got around the mechanical installations. So the main services, I'm not going to go through them all. We have water services, air handling units, building management systems, hot water, gas system, drainage and air conditioning. The right hand side there is basically an image taken from our building management system on campus. It's a sign-on based system that we have. So in terms of water services, each summer we carry out maintenance on all our tanks. Anyway, our supplier CLS, and generally we clean our tanks, we check all our temperatures and do our samples. So rather than having that done in August, it was brought forward into May because of the requirement to get buildings back in operation. So it's quite an extensive water system we have here on campus. So we had a lot of flushing out, a lot of sterilising to do, cleaning of tanks. The samples were sent away, the samples come back. All samples are good so far, and we'll do another sample test probably in August or September, cleaning out the systems and updating our asset register that we have for all our components. Air handling units, we have quite an extensive range of air handling units. So each air handling unit so far, just to confirm that our air handling units that we've looked at so far, based on the research buildings that we're getting back as part of the strategy plan for getting back, we haven't looked at some of our lecture theatres, because our lecture theatres will probably be more down the line, probably more times, probably around August or something like that. We start looking at those. But for the units that we have checked, we've changed all the filters, we've checked all the dampers, we've put all the controls, changed them to all full fresh air and extract as well. We've checked the systems and adequate ventilation, airflow. We've, on the recommendations set out in the CIBSE, we've basically changed our programming for 2 hours before and 2 hours after. And we've also left, we only have one air handling unit as part of the research where there was a thermal wheel, but it was doing a space that wasn't actually important. So we actually turned that unit off because there's nobody in the area. But when we get into our lecture theatres area, we will be looking at the thermal wheels that we have installed in our air handling units. And hopefully by that stage, there could be more clarity from the guidance documents on what we're actually doing there. I suppose from a point of view of the grills, it does say there's no need to clean ductwork, but I think from a perspective of someone using the building coming back into a space again, that's why we've taken the option of cleaning all our grills and cleaning ductwork, just to make sure that the space is clean for the person coming back into the unit. Our building management system, as we said, we complete audit of the BMS. All the sensors have been checked in the areas, any faulty sensors replaced. We've installed new CO2 sensors and calibrated ones that require calibration. And as I said, we've changed the time schedules. We've also reduced our CO2 limit on the window controls. We reduced it down to 400 as per the recommendation. And again, we've also liaised with our building colleagues to check windows, openings and closers as well. Extract fans, we always had on 24 hours anyway because of the use of the buildings, and we've increased remote daily check-in of all our systems. Hot water has become very important now with the whole requirement for hand washing. So we have an extensive hot water system on campus and different buildings. So again, these were all checked and dead leaks checked, cleaned, complete system flush and sterilize. We cleaned out our hot water cylinders through CLS again, and we've checked all our gas-fired water heaters. We've done our temperature purges and checks, and we've checked all our thermostatic mixer valves now that they're set at their correct temperature again. So quite a lot of work has been done to, I suppose, more than would normally be done, but it's important that these are all checked and recorded and dated to say that when they were done. They probably will need done again in another 3 months' time, but I think it's important we get it done. One of the other things that we've started as well is replacing some of the old taps in some of the bathrooms we did have the old screw taps and push taps, so we're changing those now to sensor taps, and we have an extensive program ahead of us now in the next few weeks to do that. Gas systems. Well, gas systems never really actually got turned off because we still have to monitor what's going on in our labs in terms of gas leaks, specialist gas as well. So what happened there was we just actually brought back a contractor and got them all tested and recertified. The cooking gases haven't been checked yet because we don't have any retail kitchens open yet. But when that happens, that'll be done. Our drainage systems, obviously with the drainage system, all our buildings weren't occupied, so a lot of them had dried up, and there was requirements to basically flush out the complete system and check all the wash and basins flows for the toilets and showers, etc. And we brought in a specialist contractor to basically flush the external drainage system to make sure we could just get a bit of movement. We did have a dry spell during the whole COVID back in April, so but May there's been a lot more rain, a lot more movement. Air conditioning. One thing about NUIG Galway, and I suppose maybe a lot of other university buildings, we don't actually have any chilled beam installations on campus. A large portion of our cooling is done through DX indoor units, whether they be wall mounted or ceiling mounted. So we did speak to our supplier, who's our framework contractor, and on the whole issue of air DX units. And we've come up with the scenario where we're actually just going to replace all the filters within the actual DX unit, rather than just not change them. I suppose again, it's back to perspective of someone using the room. They see a nice clean faceplate and change filter in it, and the tag will be changed. Fan coil units, we do have a number of fan coil units in some buildings, and we've actually just replaced filters there and give them a cleaning and just checked all pipe work. We have a number of Lawson units for small office spaces where we do have restricted air movement, and we did put them on bypass, and we have been speaking to our supplier again, and there's been a bit of research done by Mitsubishi on the Lawson air unit. I'm not sure if it's available for reviewing, but it's worth actually reading. So it's another way of probably implement more air into spaces. So again, going back to the water systems, the Legionella, we took on advice on the HSE have issued new advice on Legionella, and CIBSE also issued out advice on the water. It's one of the biggest risks we have in our buildings now under this is Legionella. So because our buildings have been closed and our water's been stagnant, and with the hot temperatures, we do have an infrastructure as part of our CUSP, which is our energy sustainability team. We did look at the whole side of recycling of water bottles and single-use plastics, and we had implemented quite I suppose, a framework of water fountains. Now the one shown there it's a really old example, but we do have more modern ones. But we actually took the decision to isolate them temporarily at the minute because they are push buttons, and the whole cleaning regime, it needs to be looked at. So they've all been isolated. Again, our showers have been isolated as well because we don't want anyone showering in the building at the minute, because we want you to come to the building do your task and leave again, and that's the main thing. And until we have that resolved, we won't be turning on showers. But again, it's up to the checking off for Legionella is very important, and it should be widespread. Electrical plant, I suppose COVID has sort of stayed away from electrical as much as possible. It seems to stick to the mechanical guys, whatever they did wrong, because it's normally the electrical guys. Electrical installations, because again, it's back to the old where the campus was quiet for 3 months. Our electrical team have gone around and they've done their checks on the main electrical boards. They've also carried out maintenance on light fittings, etc. Fire alarm, emergency lighting, which was maintained throughout, and generators and UPSs, and the data installations and PAT testing. So in terms of fire alarm, all our fire alarm was live during the whole period of time. Obviously, with all our buildings not being occupied, we still needed to protect them for fires, etc. Our emergency lighting has gone through. They've tested all the research buildings that have gone back into action, have all been retested and certified. And as other buildings come on stream, they'll be tested and certified as well. The last one there, PAT testing, I think is very important for all users, because when you're going back in now after 3 months, it needs to be checked that your appliances have been PAT tested or need to be PAT tested. and it should be with the university, buildings and estates. We look after our buildings and estates electrical appliances, but each unit looks after their own appliances. So there will be a record of PAT testing required for a number of items that haven't been tested in a while, you know. Hand dryers in bathrooms. We did look at putting a poll together to see which had anyone started using hand dryers in bathrooms. We are going to use hand dryers in bathrooms, but we're going to limit the number of hand dryers for use in each of the locations. The advice is to wash your hands thoroughly for the 20 seconds and sing happy birthday twice, which is correct if you're washing your hands correctly and you're washing all the germs. Now there is a lot of advice out there about the disadvantage of hand dryers, the advantage of hand dryers, paper towels, etc. But as of last night, and it has secured a bit better. I don't know if you can read underneath the hand dryer. This is a statement that was issued as part of the Department of Education and Public Health on return to schools, and it quite clearly says that hot air hand dryers are acceptable alternative for drying hands. Okay, so it was that information hadn't been confirmed previously, so we're going from the point of view of this document that was released for schools going back, that hand dryers are acceptable to be used. So we'll be implementing that as of today in our own buildings again. The disadvantage about I suppose paper towels is we do have problems where people throw them down the toilet, block the toilets, now we have bigger problems. So that's the advantage we're delighted with. Lift installations, I think we have over 120 lifts on campus here, and the protocol document which is issued by CIBSE was an excellent document. The document for occupancy levels and users. So at the minute, as you can see from the lift door there, that's our signage we have on our doors, and it's one lift, one person per lift at the minute, and with their bigger lifts, there's probably 2 persons allowed as long as they're wearing face masks. Again, for anyone that's coming in from outside of Ireland, then it's changed in different areas, but we're still in 2 meter rule. We will have to review the 1 person when our students start returning back to campus, because some of our students have disabilities and have carers with them, and they may need the care in the lift with them. So we'll probably have to change that protocol, and maybe that may get highlighted in the next update of the lift occupancy document. Information, there's a lot of information out there at the minute. So again, going back to where we were starting back at the start of May, there was a lot of documents issued out by both CIBSE, ASHRAE, RVIA on how to bring universities and buildings back in again. I think we should try and, as both engineers, as students, as researchers, we should keep updating ourselves on what's live in terms of information from the likes of CIBSE and ASHRAE and RVIA, and even in the other institutions that give out information like Engineers Ireland as well. The publications are being brought up to date. As I said, RVIA are issuing out their document at the end of July, which hopefully, by the end of July, which will probably identify a lot more things that is happening within the industry, and we can go on their recommendations. So going forward, basically going forward, COVID-19, we still have a lot to learn about it. As I remarked earlier to someone else, we're only 3 months into it. It's changing every day. It's fluid. Our restrictions are getting reduced, but also we're also seeing areas where different parts of the world where the restrictions are being brought back in again. So it's a very fluid situation. In terms of the whole COVID-19 and documentation, on the right hand side there, in the CIBSE journal for June 2020, I think Dr. Hal Davis sort of says it well, that building services now are being brought into the spotlight. Before, we were just the guys come in and we installed the services and we left, where the architects and even the structural engineers, they were more prevalent in the building, where the services were in the background. Where I think that's changed now, where more and more will be asked about our ventilation, about our plumbing installations, about our sanitation, and how we're going to actually overcome COVID-19. So I think it's an opportunity where, as an industry, either through building services, through refrigeration, through specialist ventilation, etc., that we should be looking at the whole way we do our design and the whole way we organise the way building services constructed, it's a time as well, people are going to be nervous entering buildings. They'd want to know, you know, they probably will require proof that their office is clean, that the ventilation system is working correctly. Working from home, do we need all these offices being built? That's the whole new concept. We have to look at how we design it and our standards going forward. Increased energy demands is one thing that's going to come out of this, with all these air handling units and different plants running a lot longer, could be running 7 days a week in teaching venues going forward. We are going to have to look at the increased energy demands and how they're going to tie in with the climate action plan and the government's requirements to reduce energy in the public sector. I'm a member of the U9 group of universities, and one of our colleagues from Cork actually brought it up last week that, you know, we have been looking at energy reduction, but how is this COVID going to affect it? So we're actually getting together as a group over the next few weeks and seeing what are the implications and what can we bring forward. If there are reports going forward, what can we bring forward from the university sector to basically make sure that we highlight the possible increases. Again, increased awareness of building services. People will become more aware of them, as I said, and as Dr. Howell Davis said, he says you're in the spotlight now, so it's up to you now as building service engineers and practitioners to ensure that we do highlight the good work that's done as building service engineers and associates, etc. Level of information post COVID-19, it's to know what is coming out. How do we know that we're actually putting forward the right information, and how do we know we're telling people we have the right information? Again, by linking, as I said before, with the CIBSE, with ASHRAE, RVIA, Engineers Ireland, etc., that all information coming out is true and accurate. And again, my favorite one is the increase of natural ventilation. Why do we need to put big expensive systems in if we can naturally ventilate? You know, the schools have been doing it for years with single-sided ventilation, and it's worked. So I think the whole rethink again of natural ventilation in offices. Now, I suppose it's fine here in Galway and we're along the Corrib and it's nice and fresh. Where if you're in a city centre, natural ventilation does become a problem. So it's the way we're going to design going forward. I think it's very important. So opportunities that are there. So as I say, all services associated with installation of mechanical, electrical lift. In my, I suppose my address as becoming chairperson of CIBSE Ireland was one of the first things I think that was required was the congratulate all the service, building services people in the industry since COVID started that have worked either in designing of hospitals, designing of new theatres, designing of any new systems that are out there, or even down to installers. We have a lot of installers, different mechanical installers, electrical installers, gas pipe installers. There's a lot of people in the industry that have basically made the industry very proud of itself in terms of what their action and how they've reacted and how they've stood up to the call. So it has to be acknowledged, I think, that building services now, we need to go forward now and expand on that effort that was made. Again, we encourage all our students to join membership, either CIBSE or ASHRAE or Engineers Ireland. As Conor said earlier, the young engineers in ASHRAE, we have the same in CIBSE with Engineers Ireland. Like, they're the guys that are coming up, they're the guys that are going to be telling us. And for anyone that's thinking about CIBSE, this is our little plug here. Our closing date for applications for membership is actually the 1st of August. So, but if you need any help and organisation in terms of applying to CIBSE as a student member or whatever, just send me an email to cibseirelandchair@gmail.com and we get back to you on it. And again, it's the same for the guys in ASHRAE. Daniel and Conor are doing a great job, and our colleagues in Engineers Ireland as well. So questions and answers, I think we're not far off where we're supposed to be. So again, I just want to thank Daniel and Conor for all their information and that they've helped me set up this technical. It's actually my first webinar, so I'm still a bit nervous about it. And I suppose my own thoughts on it now is that the industry out there, the technical industry in terms of the suppliers like the air handling unit, like the air conditioning guys, like the Legionella guys and specialists, they're right there working hard now to find the solutions to what problems that we're going to have. And I think that their challenge will help us in the next couple of months overcome the problems that we've listed out ourselves that we're finding here on campus or right within industry. So
thank you very much, Michael, for that. And yeah, very insightful presentation, and it's clear that NUIG Galway team have put in a serious amount of work over the last 3 months, I suppose, since March, and the ever-changing environment. So a lot of, I assume, a lot of changes to expect for students and researchers coming back as well. So as I said at the start of the presentation, we'll now open up for a Q&A. There's a chat function / question tab where I can already see there's a good few questions in already. I'll try and get to as many as I can, and if we don't answer any, you can follow up with myself. I'll leave my email on the slides, or Michael directly. So thanks again, Michael, for that. So without further ado, we'll head to the first question, which is from Ryan Loney. Michael, how many of the 18,500 students will be based on campus in the upcoming September? Is there a contingency plan in the event that there is another surge in COVID-19 cases and lockdown measures reintroduced as we've seen in other countries?
Thanks for the question, Ryan. The university is planning that at the minute our researchers are coming back, and selected research groups that are involved with the COVID are coming back on campus, and we're preparing for them. It is quite a detailed strategy required, because there is a lot of things to take into consideration in terms of how you operate the space, how you get into the space, how you leave the space, how you have your, I suppose, if you get an outbreak of someone on the presence, you need to have a room set up for them ready to go. In terms of students, the term starting back has been confirmed by the president on the 23rd of September, 23rd, 20th of September, when students will be back, first year students will be back online. It's going to happen online for teaching for the first period, but that may change. It's like I said before, this is very fluid. Like last week, the schools were saying it was 2 meters apart. Last night they came out and said it was 1 meter apart. So in the next few weeks that may change, but as of the university itself, the directive is that all the teaching so far will be done online, but there may be smaller groups brought in. But again, it's changing all the time. So that's the only, and again, in preparation, the step down facility has been left mothballed ready in case there is a requirement by the HSE to use that as a step down facility.
Next question up from Gavin Osborne from DCU Estates. He said, I've been using RVIA guide as a reference as it seems the most thorough. I'm following advice for limiting recirculation via FCU splits, etc., except in cases of significant cooling loads. What is your approach in NUIG Galway for locally recirculated air? Seems to be conflicting advice from ASHRAE and RVIA.
Yeah, I think in terms of the RVIA document, and when you read through the RVIA document and the ASHRAE document, the RVIA document from the EU guys, I spoke to one of the representatives there yesterday on this just to find out, and like from our point of view in NUIG Galway, the fan coil units that we have are in buildings and aren't open yet as such, okay? So they're down the line, and we're sort of holding off our own approach to those until, as I say, the RVIA are issuing out the documents then in July. The guy in RVIA was basically advising that they're doing research, and I think they're speaking with the likes of suppliers. That's why I mentioned the industry research, and the industry's out there, the fan coil manufacturers are out there looking at it to see what's required, and I think we're going to get a lot more clarity on that now in the next few weeks. You know, as I say, this thing is so fluid. Like, we're only in it 3 months, and we don't know at the minute.
Okay. The next question is from Adam O'Donovan. Thank you for your talk. You mentioned the increased use of natural ventilation. What actions or strategies do you see as being important for facilities or spaces that are naturally ventilated only?
Well, a lot of our offices on campus are basically perimeter offices with open windows, with restrictors, and the standard radiator under the window. Like, that's the way the design was. Like, some of these buildings, are 1960 years, 1960, like I'm just thinking of one called Áras de Brún there, and it's radiators with restricted natural ventilation. We're in the lucky space here in Galway because our campus is along the river, and it is noise levels are not as I say like in somewhere like Dublin where you'd have a lot of street noise. The restrictions on natural ventilation, again, we've looked at it from a point of view of going forward our own design, because we're looking from the point of view of the whole energy as well, and NZEB requirements for occupancy. And I just noticed there one of the documents in, I think it was the June magazine for CIBSE, there was a building in the UK had natural ventilation predominantly rather than mixed mode ventilation. So it's again, open a window. The guides are all saying get as much fresh air in, open the windows, open doors where possible.
One in there from Pat Mehigan. Is there a concern on recirculating air in rooms with AC units and that are not connected to an AHU?
Well, DX units within the rooms are not recirculating any air actually directly through them. They're only moving, they're there for thermal comfort and cooling comfort. The ventilation system itself, if it's in full fresh air, it shouldn't be, that's what's recommended in the ventilation guidance to version 2 document, is that it can be left on. And that's the information we're getting back from our suppliers as well.
Okay. One in from Dominic O'Sullivan. When changing out filters, be it AHUs or DX units, were they upgraded or changed like for like?
No, they were changed like for like. We didn't go into the ASHRAE have a guide about changing out filters in different levels. They were changed like for like, basically. Yeah. There was no special requirement. We didn't look at putting in any HEPA filters or anything. A lot of our systems are full fresh air and full extract. In our research buildings, as I say, there is HEPA filters in some of our specialist labs, and they were changed. The HEPA filters were changed as well. And again, it's not the thing that we says, oh, we changed the filters. It was actually part of our maintenance regime where we do change the filters. So we brought that forward. We placed the filters with the new filters and logged them. Now, again, we've decided as a college that in 3 months' time we'll change the filters again. So our regime has changed. It was twice a year, now it's going to be 4 times a year changing out filters. It is an expense, it is a cost, it is a time as well. But I feel that we have to remember that we have people going back into the office again that are nervous about going back into the offices, and if we can show that we've implemented these steps to try and reduce the amount of contamination or whatever coming through the system. And I think I didn't mention, but we actually did clean ducting in some of our spots, more of the fact that we wanted to ensure that occupants are getting back into a space that is not 100% clean, but as close can be.
Okay, Liam Tolton opens up a discussion about hand dryers, which we were discussing prior to the webinar, Michael. With the guidance from last night, you were saying. So he says that I'm definitely concerned about the use of hand dryers. It is my opinion that while there is no evidence to link these to COVID spread, that it is not the same as saying that they do not increase the risk if a symptomatic or even asymptomatic spreader doesn't wash their hands correctly, or even if they cough, sneeze into the airstream, as they are use these units, the 2 meters social distance will completely break down and the airflow will almost certainly push the virus laden droplet well beyond the 2 meters. I suppose you just open up that discussion, what we were mentioning about the hand dryers and the kind of ambiguity with the guidelines. And
so the guidelines were very vague. Even the HSE were wash your hands and then dry them. It didn't say dry them with what. It didn't say dry them with the towel, dry them with the paper towel, or dry them with the hand dryer. And we had the same concern here about that. So to try and combat that, what we did was, a lot of our bathrooms were quite big, to maybe 4, 5, 6 wash-on basins, and we may have had 3 hand dryers in place. So what we've actually done is, because we've reduced the number of wash-on basins, we're going to reduce the hand dryers to one hand dryer. And We've also increased the extract out of bathrooms to try and make sure that, that there's more extract out of the room. If the person's, like, again, what the department, not even the department, what the government is saying, it's a person's responsibility to wash your hands correctly, go through the procedures. It's all about taking responsibility for yourself and how you actually carry out the way you live. Wash your hands correctly, dry them correctly, and leave the bathroom correctly. I'd say there's probably a lot more research being done. I know one of the manufacturers has done research with a specialist in America. It was in the Facilities magazine there not so long ago, and that was the sort of link where we were looking at, but we weren't too sure. But when the document came out last night from the Department of Health and Department of Education, and it basically quite clearly in a line, as I attached as part of the presentation, that they see that they're acceptable use for drying hands. So it gives a bit of guidance, but there is still the fear that, unknown.
Paul O'Connor just has 2 questions on the use of sensors. So he says, are you using integrating additional IAQ pathogen sensors? And he also has asked, do you remotely monitor the college satellite sites? Are you using analytics and your HVAC data? So he's just kind of opening discussion on the monitoring and the data acquisition from NUIG Galway, which I know you focus on a lot.
Yeah. I suppose from the point of view of the first part, we're not actually, we're on that side, no, our system isn't that sophisticated yet. In terms of the remote sites, a lot of our remote sites are still closed because they're not in the pathway of opening, like the likes of our building in door isn't open yet because it's not part of it's more of a teaching space. We do have local maintenance teams that do carry out visits to check water systems, fire alarm systems, and we've only got small ventilation systems, so we wouldn't have high-tech ventilation systems in them. It's more our BMS system is looking after our campus-wide network from all the buildings here on campus, and also our buildings over in the hospital site as well, where we have a number of buildings over in the hospital.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all for the Q&A. Any questions that have been left unanswered, we will follow up and we'll send an email out. Michael, can you just see my screen there, closing announcements?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So thanks again, Michael, for that presentation. And again, all content and relative material will be on our website. Just a few closing announcements. Our next event of this webinar series is on the 16th of July, and this will be presented as with Bill Banfelt, who is a professor of architect engineering at Penn State University, and he's actually the lead of the ASHRAE Epidemic Task Force, which I mentioned at the start of the presentation. He'll give an overview of guidance published by ASHRAE and other organizations, which will provide an expert insight into mitigating the risks of infectious diseases and what practices to avoid. So as you're registered for today, an email will go out to you directly about upcoming webinars. Lastly, if you'd like to keep up to date with ASHRAE Ireland, you can sign up to our mailing list. And also, if you're interested in volunteering with us, there's committee positions available in the upcoming year. So please contact us. Thanks very much to our sponsors who help make our ongoing activities possible. So with that, I'd like to thank you for attending, and the webinar session has ended. Thank you.
Thanks.